Hello, patrons. This is Cyber Saloon. So, I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we are kicking off the Winter Anime 2021 season. It's so crazy to me that it's already 2021. But we're kicking it off with the return of ReZero. And I thought it was an alright opening episode. I'm glad we didn't have to wait for too long. I'm glad we're getting a second core of it as well. I thought this episode was alright. There were parts of it that I thought kind of dragged along a little bit. But it's kind of like a foundation episode. I think that this season's also going to be just as good. I thought the first core of season 2 was really good, and I think the second core will be really good as well. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen this season. We have to deal with the mansion, which is under siege, which will be under siege by Elsa and the witch's cult, and we also have the Great Rabbit, which is the giant infinite rabbit horde that we saw in in the earlier core, where it's like a giant, imagine like a big swarm of like locusts that basically they just devour everything. The big brain like child of Daphne. I don't her reasoning for making these things still doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. So we pick off where we were last time, with Otto just punching Subaru and telling him that he needs to stop carrying things like he basically Subaru's trying to like atlas everything on his shoulders. It's been like that since season 1. He doesn't ask for help when he needs it. Like in season 1, we saw it. He had to do it when he was trying to take down the White Well, where he's trying to basically play politics and play negotiations with Krush and her whole crew to help take down the White Well. But most times when he's dealing with situations, he generally he comes up with his own like way of having to deal with it, and he never really reaches out or to people around him to really like figure out how he's going to overcome a situation. And most times, like initially you can't really blame him, because Subaru, like, it's just like it's hard to explain like the ability that he has, that he can't tell people like what's happening or what's going to happen, and so it's hard to kind of like formulate like initially, like to try to like seek out help like in accomplishing certain things, because Subaru already has it in his head, okay, if X doesn't work, I'm gonna kill myself and try Y, and like, okay, maybe I'll try a combination of X and Y to like try to overcome this route. So Subaru, I get why he doesn't really reach out for help. I mean, Otto kind of lays it out to where Subaru isn't strong at all. Like, Subaru gets his ass beat all the time. He isn't like a physical guy. He isn't good at fighting. Like, he's not particularly intelligent. He's not dumb, but I mean, he's not like some galaxy brain, and he doesn't really have any abilities. So Otto kind of explains it to him, like, I get like the tough guy act you have to pull off, but at the same time, you can't be afraid to like reach out to people and ask for help. And Otto like instills that pretty well inside Subaru. This next part, so he obviously recruits Otto into his grand scheme, because that's what this whole episode is. It's basically like Subaru trying to assemble a bunch of people and come up with a plan, because he has to save both the mansion, which is where Frederica, Petra, and Rem and Beatrice are, and he also has to save the village that he's currently in Sanctuary, which is where Garfield, Emilia, and everyone else is, because both these things happen simultaneously. So he can't just choose one. He obviously has to choose both. I wasn't really a fan, honestly. I get what was trying to be implemented here. Maybe it's just the way that it was delivered. I wasn't really a fan, honestly, of like Subaru's conversation with Roswaal. The point of it I get, but it felt very shonen-y, and it just felt kind of goofy. And like the way that it was, I guess it was the way it was handled. Like, it just felt off. It felt like I was watching some like shonen anime where it's just like, oh, like, we're gonna overcome this together. It's like, okay, like. So what basically happens in this conversation is Subaru goes to Roswaal to tell him that, like, to basically like make a bet with him. Like, okay, and the bet is if he can save both Sanctuary and the mansion from the witch's cult and the Great White Rabbit, that Roswaal has to help him put Emilia on the throne. Which Roswaal takes this pretty confidently. We see this later, that Roswaal has never lost anything, so he takes this pretty confidently. And then we kind of get, like, Roswaal asks why you should be pissed at me given all the things that... Because Roswaal knows about his ability, and Roswaal has done a lot of shady shit. And so he's basically asking why you shouldn't forgive me for this. But Subaru basically brings up a good point. It's like, okay, like, nothing bad has happened yet. Like, the village massacre and the mansion massacre, that neither of them happened yet. Emilia isn't mind broken yet. She hasn't even done the trial yet. So none of this stuff has really ever occurred. And Super also brings up, like, a weird point when he's talking to Roswaal. He's like, my ability really isn't that useful. I would heavily disagree with that. The ability to restart from somewhere is probably actually one of the best abilities you can ever have. I can't think of one that is really better. Like, okay, I get, like, okay, like, Subaru's probably thinking, like, okay, like, something bad really happens, but I have to reset. But that reset gives you the ability to basically overcome literally any obstacle, because it's just like, okay, you can just try out, like, a bunch of different factors on why this scenario didn't happen, right, and just end up correcting it. So I don't agree with that. I kind of see where you might be coming from on that, but I don't really agree with it at all. But that was about the gist of this conversation that Subaru has with Roswaal. He wants Roswaal's help by getting Emilia on the throne, or Roswaal is obviously exceptionally powerful, and he can do a lot to help with that. And he has a lot of influence as well. So that was about the gist. Again, like, the points of the conversation make sense. Like, it kind of goes like Otto telling him, like, he needs help, but at the same time, just the way it was delivered was, like, really it's not a word, but shonen like shonen-y, like, that's a dumb word, but it just felt like, I don't know, I wasn't really crazy about the way it was delivered, but whatever. So we see Subaru goes up to Ram, and he basically tells Ram everything at this point. And he tells Ram everything, and that Ram kind of gives him advice that, like, she brings up, like, why is she having trouble, like, Emilia during the trials, having trouble overcoming her past. And, like, Subaru actually thinks about this, because, I mean, Subaru and Emilia, they've never really talked. I mean, Subaru, to be honest, Subaru really doesn't know much about Emilia. We kind of do, like, for anyone who's seen Frozen Bond, like, you kind of do, but Subaru and Emilia have never really talked much about, like, where she comes from. To be honest, he really doesn't know that much about her, but he's trying. So she kind of gives him that advice, because Subaru's kind of trying. The whole point of this episode is Subaru's basically forming a plan. He has to have, like, a bunch of pieces in place to both save the mansion and save the village of Sanctuary. Ram will be on his side, because, like, Otto brings it up, like, well, because she's obviously... Ram is very loyal to Roswaal. I don't know if you call it dating, but they have an intimate thing going on, and she's extremely loyal to him. Why, we don't really know yet. I'm not quite sure why Ram has, like, such a loyalty to him, but she does. And so Otto brings up, like, wouldn't that make Ram your enemy? And Subaru is like, not really, because, like, Subaru has a lot of trust in Ram, so we got her on board. So the next is Garfield. So Garfield doesn't want Sanctuary liberated, just because, like, he likes the community that they kind of have there, and he doesn't really trust people from the outside. So Otto and Subaru kind of, like, make a little plan on how they're going to get Garfield on their side. And then Subaru also brings up he needs to go check on Emilia, because, again, like what I was saying earlier, Subaru really doesn't know anything about Emilia's past. And the first trial within Sanctuary is basically, it's her overcoming her past, and, like, it's very traumatic, obviously, for her. And Subaru needs to understand why that is, so he can help her with it. And next, Subaru ends up going to Rizuru, the small little elf chick. The clones, they're the ones that they're in Kingda's basically failed, like, immortality experiment she had going on. So there's, like, 4 of them that are like kind of like the primary ones that oversee Sanctuary. And Subaru goes to talk to one that's, like, that's currently at the Crystal, and he basically has to reintroduce himself, because, like, the previous ones that he's met are, like, the other guardians of it. So, like, he has to meet with this one. And he's trying to figure out a little bit more about Garfield. Like, he goes to talk to her. He tries to figure out, like, a little bit more about Garfield. Because she brings up, like, oh, like, Garfield, what about Garfield? And Subaru says, we're going to it's inevitable that him and I are basically going to come in conflict with one another, but like I want to know more about him. Like just because we're going to clash doesn't mean we can't become friends eventually. So Subaru's trying to like recruit Garfield on his side, and Rizuru is trying to like she basically gave him information and wants to help him basically put Garfield on his side, because Rizuru, that version of Rizuru anyways, like wants to see Sanctuary liberated. And Garfield, there's a reason Garfield doesn't really trust Subaru. It's because Subaru has that the witch's miasma around him. So for obvious, and I can understand why Garfield probably wouldn't trust a person who has that kind of energy, for lack of a better word, around them, because he thinks he's like he has some malevolent like intentions. And then we get to Subaru goes to check on Emilia, and it's kind of funny initially. She hasn't been sleeping, and obviously you can imagine she's probably extremely nervous for the Sanctuary trial again. But she hasn't been sleeping, and Subaru kind of makes like a jest at her, and that she's being slothful, and she makes this adorable pouting face, telling him that he's mean. I thought that was kind of cute, but Subaru kind of asks like Emilia, like, you know, what's been going on, like ask her about her, like what exactly are you facing in the Sanctuary. And Emilia tells, for those who haven't seen it, I would highly recommend. It's on Crunchyroll. It's our other various means. The film Frozen Bond. It's a good. It makes you understand Emilia's character a lot more, like especially like the bond that she has with Puck. It does a really good job of like explaining that background, and it's important because she kind of briefly goes over it in this, like a little bit. The memory she's facing, it's her. She was thought out, and we don't know why, but everyone else, like her parents and most other people that she knew, were like frozen in that forest, and it's basically her growing up in that forest by herself with Puck watching over her, and she is trying to figure out a way to like overcome that and a way to like unthaw. She was basically waiting for them like to like unfreeze, like kind of like she did. Like a brief, like Emilia basically survived in the forest like by herself, and Puck like watches over her a lot, and she had a lot of trouble doing it, and that's part of the reason she's had, and also because a lot of her memories are sealed. Like when Puck made that contract with her, like a lot of her earlier memories were kind of sealed, and she can't really remember a lot of her past because of that contract with Puck. Acha, interestingly enough, we find out the reason, like in previous seasons, like Emilia basically tells Subaru multiple times, the reason I want to be ruler is a selfish reason. And it turns out that reason, when Roswell found Emilia, he basically told her like he would unthaw this forest and basically like her family and everyone, like all the people that she knew, if she took the throne. So we found out that's her reason for even going into the royal selection to begin with, was show that like all the people that her family and everyone else, like all the other elves in that forest, can be unthawed basically. And it's definitely within Roswell's power to do that. She passes out. Obviously she hasn't had much sleep, and it's a good reason for her to do it. I mean, I understand that, like all the people she cares about, like, you know, it's like it's a good reason to want to do that. So she passes out from no sleep basically. And then we get the big sad part, the ending of Puck and Emilia's contract. This kind of came as a shock to me, actually. I didn't figure this was coming, but it makes sense given the fact that because of the contract, a lot of her like earlier memories are basically sealed within Puck. So Puck breaks her contract, and like Puck tells her like that Puck obviously cares more about Emilia than basically anyone else, and Puck basically tells Emilia that like I'm leaving you into the second there's only I love you the most, but I'm leaving you in the hands of the one who loves you second most, which is obviously Subaru, because Puck and Subaru have a conversation when Emilia passes out, and Puck is going to basically leave Emilia in Subaru's hands, which makes sense. So Puck is doing this because Emilia cannot overcome that trial without remembering her past, because there's no way she's ever going to overcome anything if she can't remember her past, and she's just suddenly bombarded by it when she goes in to take the trial at Sanctuary. So Puck breaks the contract, and it's pretty sad. Obviously Emilia's pretty sad about it. And then something else happens later where you kind of like understand why she's extremely upset about this. Subaru comes to visit her at night, and Emilia wants him to stay by her side, and like the whole entire night Subaru promises to do it. she wakes up later and Subaru's not there, and then you see her kind of break down like after that, like the Puck, like she calls Puck a liar. She calls like her mother figure Fortana, she calls her a liar, and she calls Subaru a liar because like it's seemingly to her, everyone who makes promises to her seems to break them. And then after that, the next morning, the whole village is looking for her because she's run off, including Garfield. Garfield goes to try to see if Rizuru knows anything. Rizuru isn't there. And then we see that Otto and Otto has I don't know if it's a trap or I don't know what it is, but Otto and Garfield are going to have a conversation. And I do think that Otto is going to try to persuade Garfield over to whatever grand plan that Subaru is making up. And then it ends off with Emilia. She's in like this part of like this old ancient relic, and she's just sitting by herself, obviously pretty depressed. And then Subaru comes up to her and asks her to tell her everything. So what I think is gonna happen next episode, I think we'll probably get a deeper insight into like Emilia's past. Hopefully it's not just like a rehash of Frozen Pond, but since she has her like her earliest memories back, hopefully it's a little bit, you'll get some memories of her, like of her parents maybe, and like how like her power even started to manifest and everything else. Hopefully we get a lot more of a backstory on Emilia the second half, in the next episode. And I do think that Garfield, it'll be interesting to see how Otto and Garfield's talk goes, because Otto can't exactly keep Garfield there, so I'm curious to see whether Otto can kind of persuade Garfield to join Subaru's coalition that he has going on, because Subaru's gonna need as much help as he can. Like he's gonna. Ram may have said she's not gonna help him. Ram's gonna help him. Like he's gonna need Garfield and like a bunch of other people within the sanctuary to help him out, especially against the great white rabbit. I'm curious to see how he's probably gonna, after this, I think the next episode will end with him going to like the mansion, because he kind of he's basically fighting a war on two fronts here. He needs to go to the mansion to make sure that they're ready for what's coming. It's not just to the mansion, but the village that's right next to the mansion. The witches cult kill all of them too. That annoying like little bitch, like I forgot her name, but she's part of the witches cult, but she's with Elsa. So he's gonna have to fight. He's fighting war on two fronts here. It'll be interesting to see how he's gonna like his strategy that he has to like kind of come up with on the sanctuary front. Now I hope we get to see Emilia go through the trial next episode too, because I am curious to see like what's like overbearing her so much. So that's what I thought of this episode. I thought it was an alright. I thought the Rizuru part kind of dragged a little bit, to be honest, and I thought that the Garfield, not the Garfield, but the Roswell and Subaru kind of moment, the points were good-ish, but it's just I felt like it was a little kind of off, like in its presentation. But the rest of the Puck and Emilia thing I thought was great. I thought the breaking of the contract was really well done. Subaru and Emilia I thought was really well done. And the ending, I mean, I'm excited to see where like Otto's conversation with Garfield as well. The episode overall, like everything else, it's White Fox, and of course they do great animation. Also, I'm curious if White Fox is doing title screens now. I was very surprised. The name of the episode is it's called The Something Bet, and like they actually had a title screen for like the name of the episode. I thought that was surprising. Well, guys, what'd you think of the episode overall? I thought it was alright. Again, like I just thought parts of it dragged certain times, but it's ReZero. Like I'm obviously really excited for this season. And I'm excited to see the payoffs again for this season as well. Let me guys know what you thought in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.